At the point at which Comey was fired and the special counsel, Robert Mueller, was appointed, the president's attitude turned, and it got even more angry. And that anger manifested itself in a bunch of directives to his immediate aides to do stuff that could theoretically be construed as obstruction of justice if they had actually carried it out, and would probably be prevented from an obstruction of justice charge only because the president's intent in saying all this stuff was to prevent public embarrassment, not criminal indictment. That's why you hear Barr keep coming back to the point. There was no collusion here for the president to protect himself against. This was all him being embarrassed by press reports. And so it was him telling people, hey, maybe you should just go out there and lie to the press, which, by the way, is also not obstruction of justice. Lying to the press is not obstruction of justice. So here's what the Mueller report says. They say on May 17th, 2017, the acting attorney general for the Russia investigation appointed a special counsel to conduct the investigation and related matters. The president reacted to that news by telling advisors it was the quote-unquote end of his presidency and demanding that Jeff Sessions resign because he wanted to put in a new attorney general, presumably who would rein in Mueller. Sessions submitted his resignation. The president ultimately did not accept it. The president told the aides that the special counsel had conflicts of interest and suggested that the special counsel therefore could not serve. The president's advisors told him the asserted conflicts were meritless and had already been considered by the DOJ. On June 17, 2017, the president called Don McGahn, his White House counsel, and directed him to call the acting attorney general and say that the special counsel had conflicts of interest and must be removed. McGahn did not carry out the direction, however, deciding he would rather resign than trigger what he regarded as a potential Saturday night massacre. Right? That's an invocation of the Nixon firing of Attorney General Archibald Cox, or the special prosecutor Archibald Cox. So, all of this is not necessarily obstruction of justice, but verges on it from the point of view that says that Trump was doing all of this stuff out of frustration that people were going to uncover his crimes. Again, intent is an element of the crime. I keep coming back to that because intent is an element of the crime. If this were a strict liability crime, Trump would be guilty. It is not a strict liability crime. You have to show that he had intent to corruptly impede official proceedings. That is not proved here. Okay. What are the other efforts to curtail the special counsel's investigation? 2 days after directing McGahn to have the special counsel removed, the president made another attempt to affect the course of the Russia investigation. On June 19, 2017, the president met one-on-one in the Oval Office with former campaign manager and dope Corey Lewandowski and dictated a message for Lewandowski to deliver to Sessions. The message said that Sessions should publicly announce, notwithstanding his recusal from the Russia investigation, that the investigation was very unfair to the president, that the president had done nothing wrong, and that Sessions planned to meet with the special counsel and let him move forward with investigating election meddling for future elections. Lewandowski said he understood what the president wanted Sessions to do. This is the thing that comes closest to obstruction. Right? Is the president trying to tell Jeff Sessions that he was going to change the nature of the special counsel's purview. Now, even that is not necessarily obstruction, in the sense that the president does have authority over the special counsel. This is the case that Alan Dershowitz has made, is that the special counsel does work for the executive branch. Trump can fire him for whatever reason he wants. That's not obstruction. That may be the grounds for an impeachment, but that is not necessarily criminal obstruction. 1 month later, in another private meeting for Lewandowski, on July 19, 2017, the president asked about the status of his message for Sessions to limit the special counsel investigation to future election interference. Lewandowski told the president the message would be delivered soon. After that meeting, the president publicly criticized Sessions in an interview with the New York Times and then issued a series of tweets making it clear that Sessions' job was in jeopardy. Lewandowski did not want to deliver the president's message personally, so he asked senior White House official Rick Dearborn to deliver it to Sessions. Dearborn was uncomfortable with the task and did not end up following through. So Sessions never received this message. His advisors prevented what could have been construed as obstruction of justice right there. And then there are a bunch of accusations that the president made efforts to prevent public disclosure of evidence, but public disclosure of evidence is not, in fact, a criminal offense. Right? If I tell somebody to lie to the press, that is not criminal. It may be bad, but Trump lies to the press all the time. So, again, baked into the cake. So when the Mueller investigation says that in summer 2017, the president instructed Donald Trump Jr. to delete a line from his statement about the Trump Tower meeting to the press, that is not actually obstruction of justice. That's just him being bad. And when Michael Cohen repeatedly denied that the president had played any role in Trump Jr.'s statement, that was lying to the public. That's bad. That is not criminal. Okay. Finally, the Mueller investigation says, in early summer 2017, the president called Sessions at home and again asked him to reverse his recusal from the Russia investigation. Sessions did not reverse his recusal. On October 2017, the president met privately with Sessions in the Oval Office and asked him to take a look at investigating Clinton. In December 2017, shortly after Flynn pled guilty pursuant to a cooperation agreement, the president met with Sessions in the Oval Office and suggested, according to notes taken by a senior advisor, that if Sessions unrecused and took back supervision of the Russia investigation, he would be a hero. Sessions, of course, did not unrecuse, and the Mueller investigation went forward as stated. So as we say, the question as to whether the president did stuff that was quote-unquote criminal here is not provable. It's not a provable question, which is probably the reason that Mueller left it up in the air. And I think Attorney General Barr looked at this and said, there's no way that I can prove this beyond a reasonable doubt. Him going to various advisors and fuming about Jeff Sessions and then not doing anything, especially when he has the full authority to just fire whomever he wants. If he wants to fire Jeff Sessions, he can fire Jeff Sessions. If he wants to fire Robert Mueller, he can fire Robert Mueller. If he wants to order an end to an investigation, the president can even do that, right? He can even order the end to an investigation without that necessarily being criminal obstruction of justice, since he is, in fact, the president of the United States. That may be impeachable. It is not necessarily criminal. Okay, in a second, we'll get to more on the Mueller report. So the Mueller report continues by talking about whether the president ordered people to lie. So apparently in early 2018, the press reported that President Trump had directed Don McGahn to have the special counsel removed in June 2017, and that McGahn had threatened to resign rather than carry out the order. The president reacted to the news stories by directing White House officials to tell McGahn to dispute the story and create a record stating that he had not been ordered to have the special counsel removed. McGahn told those officials that the media reports were accurate in stating that the president had directed McGahn to have the special counsel removed. So, again, this is the president telling his friends to tell McGahn to publicly dispute the story. That is not necessarily the president telling people to lie to legal investigators. Now, if you want to broadly read the statute, and a lot of this relies on sort of legalese, if you want to broadly read the statute to suggest that the president was corruptly intending to interfere with a pending investigation by publicly tweeting things, I don't think that that actually works. Legally speaking, if the president tweets something publicly, and he says, like, I hate Robert Mueller, and then the charge is you tried to corruptly impede the investigation, that doesn't work. And if he told Don McGahn, go out and lie to the press, that is also a terrible thing to do. It is not a criminal thing to do. And the same thing holds true with regard to Mike Flynn and Paul Manafort. The suggestion that the president was publicly going around and saying about Flynn and Manafort and Michael Cohen, where he was praising them and then he was criticizing them based on whether they were talking to the government. He was doing all of that in public, right? He was calling Michael Cohen a rat. Is that obstruction of justice? I mean, probably not, given that the president can sound off on his opinion as much as he wants. You could run into serious First Amendment issues if you called it obstruction of justice for the president to issue his opinion that Michael Cohen was a rat. So here's what the Mueller report says. They say, although the series of events we investigated involved discrete acts, the overall pattern of the president's conduct toward the investigations can shed light on the nature of the president's acts and the inferences that can be drawn about his intent. In particular, the actions we investigated can be divided into two phases, reflecting a possible shift in the president's motives. The first phase covered the period from the president's first interactions with Comey through the president's firing of Comey. During that time, the president had been repeatedly told he was not personally under investigation. Soon after the firing of Comey and the appointment of the special counsel, however, the president became aware that his own conduct was being investigated in an obstruction of justice inquiry. At that point, the president engaged in a second phase of conduct involving public attacks on the investigations, non-public efforts to control it, and efforts in both public and private to encourage witnesses not to cooperate with the investigation. Now, here's the thing. You would think that that sentence alone, under the broadest standard of obstruction, would fall under obstruction, right? I mean, they are accusing him point blank of non-public efforts to control the nature of the investigation. But that doesn't, again, actually mean obstruction of justice unless he is doing so with corrupt intent. And that's Trump's best argument. I'm angry. I'm mad that this investigation was going forward. I'm pissed off in general. And so I was sounding off to my people saying, you know what, let's shut this thing down because I'm angry that I'm not being exonerated. Just exonerate me already. What the hell is this stuff? That is Trump's best defense. It always was Trump's best defense. Judgments about the nature of the president's motives during each phase would be informed by the totality of the evidence. Now, what that sentence is basically saying is that Mueller suspects that Trump actually wanted to shut down the investigation, but there is not enough evidence to prove that the president wanted to shut down the investigation for corrupt purposes. They said, because we ultimately determined not to make a traditional prosecutorial judgment, we did not draw conclusions about the president's conduct. The evidence we obtained about the president's actions and intent presents difficult issues that would need to be resolved if we were making a traditional prosecutorial judgment. At the same time, if we had confidence after a thorough investigation of the facts that the president clearly did not commit obstruction of justice, we would so state. Based on the facts and the applicable legal standards, we are unable to reach that judgment. Accordingly, while this report does not conclude that the president committed a crime, it also does not exonerate him. And bottom line is, this is all about intent. How do you read the president's intent? So people who don't like the president are going to read it as though the president's intent was to quash the investigation out of guilt. Again, there's no underlying crime. And people who are more fond of the president, and frankly, people I think who are more objective, look at this and they say, there is no underlying crime. The president is a temperamental person at best. The president says a lot of dumb crap to his advisors. Those advisors shut him down on a regular basis and stopped him from doing things that would border on the criminal or veer into the criminal. And thus, while he has done bad, immoral things here, while he has exerted pressure in certain areas, that does not amount to obstruction of justice with corrupt intent.